everyone. Welcome back to Reflect Forward. I'm your host, Carrie Siggins, and I am so happy you are here with me today. I hope you've been having a great week. I am looking out my window right now at a bluebird day here in Southwest Colorado, and I am filled with gratitude. It has not been an easy year, an easy month, and really even easy week. But I feel extremely fortunate that I live in a place where I can get outside and get some fresh air. My husband and son and I have been skiing and mountain biking and enjoying what a warm winter in Colorado has to bring so far, I guess. And it's nice to not feel so, pent up with having this wide open space out here. And interestingly enough, as we've been out skiing and mountain biking, I'm seeing that my 8-year-old son, Jack, is probably going to be faster at me than everything here in the very near future. He is an unbelievable skier and mountain biker. And it's very exciting to watch his skills advance, especially because we have so much time to be able to get outside and enjoy being together as a family and getting some exercise and pushing ourselves and teaching him these new skills. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. And I hope that you're having the same sort of week and can get outside and enjoy fresh air and sunshine no matter where you are in the world. So I'm so excited to tee up my guest today, Andy Petranek. Andy shares the same last name as me. My maiden name is Petranek. And I met Andy several years ago when I joined my first Whole Life Challenge, which is a social health game that you do online. You play for points for wellness. And when I saw that Andy was the founder and his last name was Petranek, I said, oh, I better reach out to him. So it turns out we're related. During this podcast interview was the first time that we had had a chance to actually talk to each other. And oh boy, we had fun. It is emotional and vulnerable and fascinating and insightful, this interview. And I really hope you enjoy it as much as I do. So let me tell you a little bit about Andy, and then we'll get to it. So Andy is a life and leadership coach. He works with successful executives and leaders and entrepreneurs who are stuck, which I know we can all relate with that. Stuck in life, stuck in your body, stuck in your relationship, in a marriage, in a family, job, career, all those different things that we get stuck in and that cause us to lose satisfaction, joy, energy, confidence, passion, all those things that we used to feel, but maybe not so much once we get stuck. Well, that's what Andy does. As a leader himself, he has embraced change regularly, which you will hear all about in this podcast. In his life, he's been a musician, a U.S. Marine, a sales professional, a professional athlete, a personal trainer, a gym owner, and a global movement leader through CrossFit. He's been an entrepreneur, and he founded the Whole Life Challenge, which is the social health game that I mentioned earlier. So in this episode of Reflect Forward, Andy shares how his diverse experiences have shaped him as a coach and leader in his journey to create a life he loves, which I think we can all relate to. So hold tight, and I'll be right back, and you can meet Andy. Welcome back, everybody. I'm so excited for you to meet Andy. Andy, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for being here. It's really cool to connect with you, given that we're actually related.
I know. This is so much fun. And we share so many similarities. So I'm really excited for this interview. So let's hop into it. Tell us about yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
Well, my name is Andy Petranek, and I am a life and leadership coach. I've been in the world of coaching. I mean, if I'm honest, really extends back to when I was in the Marine Corps. Like, I was a Marine back in the early 90s. I was in the first Persian Gulf War, but it was my first real experience at being responsible for helping other people get to where they really needed to be or really wanted to be. And but I didn't know that that's where I was headed, and then I got into the world of I was a sales rep after the Marine Corps, and then I got into elite racing, adventure racing, these long distance eco challenge, Raid Gawaz, traveling around the world, sponsored by Red Bull, like crazy. And that led me into this world of health and fitness. And because people ask me, how'd you get in such good shape? And will you train me? And I'm like, I guess I could, sure. And then I opened up one of the first CrossFit gyms in the world in 2004, CrossFit Los Angeles, and still going today. It's got a different name. It's called Oak Park, but I sold that in 2015. And I started a company called the Whole Life Challenge in 2012, which is a online health and wellness game that you play to see how much of a improvement you can make in your health, wellness, and well-being. And I'm no longer working on that directly. I'm still a part owner, and but I've just gone back to my roots of like helping one person at a time.
That's great. So that's how I got to know who you were. Even though we're related, we never were connected. It was during my first Whole Life Challenge.
Yeah.
Gosh, probably, 8 years ago, something like that. I think maybe it was your second or third one that you did, but that's how we met. So yeah. And then it was like, hey, I know you. You have the same last name as me.
Which is, it's not like we have a last name of Jones or Smith.
No, Petranek is definitely a unique name for sure.
Yeah.
And I never knew any other Petraneks growing up except for my immediate family. So it was really cool to get connected to.
I didn't either. Yeah, same here.
A distant cousin. Very great. Good. All right. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about the Whole Life Challenge in a little bit, but I want to dive into your upbringing because I find it fascinating that you grew up in a family of classical musicians, especially considering your choice of profession now. So can you talk about what that was like, and especially when you knew that you wanted to forge a different path?
So, I mean, the interesting thing is I never knew any other way. I didn't know the difference, right? So when I was wearing a tux and a suit at 3 years old and going to concerts, it was just part of my normal life. My dad was a concert violist and a conductor, and he was well known in the state of Maryland for having started two pretty like well-established orchestras. One is a youth orchestra and one was an adult symphony orchestra. And music educator, and my mom was a concert violinist. And, so we had classical music playing in the house all the time. Like I didn't know any pop stuff until I got into high school and I started playing it on my own. I didn't know that I didn't want to be in music because I was doing so well at it. I was like really, really talented on playing the trumpet, and it came so easily to me. I didn't have to work that hard for it. But I was kind of on this track. And I think if I look back I don't think I could have made another decision because I just wasn't aware enough of my own desires and inner, it was like, of course I'm going to be a trumpet player. Of course I'm going to go play in a big symphony orchestra. Of course, I got into Eastman School of Music, which is it's like the Juilliard of trumpet because of the teachers. I got in there in Northwestern, both schools. They only accept 4 trumpet players in the world. And then I promptly, after about a year, I promptly quit. So I figured out that like, this is not for me. Although I didn't know what was for me.
Yeah, that's great. I share a similar story. So I went to engineering school. My grandfather, who is your dad's brother, was a mathematician, and my dad didn't go to school for mathematics, but is a brilliant mathematician. And so this whole path, you're going to, go to engineering school. That's what you're going to do. And I went to Colorado School of Mines, which is one of the best engineering schools in the country. And I got there and I was like, oh my God, I hate this. And I am not going to be an engineer, but I'm also not going to quit. So like I persevered through engineering school while playing softball until I could figure out like, what the heck am I supposed to do with my life? But it was this very interesting shift of, this is my life and I'm going to live it. And it is not going to be doing what my whole trajectory has been. So I get that. And my entry out of it was, or exit out of it was a little tumultuous. Made some pretty bad decisions afterwards as I was trying to figure out who I was. But I share that of going like, wow, this is not what I want to do. And it's liberating and scary at the same time.
Yeah, very much so. Like I feel very grateful that I had the Marine Corps to kind of like guide me, because I had no choice. Once I signed my contract, I was like committed for 4 years after college. I never had to think about what I wanted to do. I never had to, I was just on a track. And I think that would have made it way, way, way harder, had I had to be struggling with what am I going to do with my life, after college.
Yeah, I think that structure is probably something that I could have benefited from. That's for sure. My life took a little bit of meandering, but it was good. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am today without the stupid decisions I made afterwards. So tell us a little bit about
Should I interview you now? And so tell us about your
Oh God. Yeah, that's definitely an entire different podcast. So we'll save that one for a different day. So tell us about the Marine Corps. So how did that really impact your new trajectory, and what happened when you got out?
It really gave me a foundation in discipline, of course, in physicalness. Like there was a sense of manliness that I think I always felt I didn't have as a musician. Like I felt like a little wimpy, like I was a band geek. And so there was a big piece of me that I feel like it brought in. And as you know, as we talked about before, my dad wasn't a big factor in my life. He wasn't around to kind of bring me into manhood. So the Marine Corps kind of filled that role for me. The military and the Marine Corps, my naval officer instructors in college, and then the Marines. Finding my way after the Marines was, you could say that I'm still doing that. But I fell into this outside sales job and I did really well with it. But I also fell into these adventure sports, and I started mountain biking, and I started rock climbing and mountaineering, and then the Eco Challenge came along.
Yeah, so I love this idea of you subscribe to do really hard things. So what is the hardest thing that you've ever done, and what have you learned from it?
Well, getting married might have been that ranks right up there.
Oh, come on. I thought you were going to talk about running through a jungle for like 12 days and we on the Eco Challenge.
That was hard, but it also ended. Like it was 12 days or 10 days. That's really hard. But I've been married for 19 years. Like it's not ending, and it's great. I love that it's not ending, but holy shit, that's been really hard. From an athletic standpoint, probably what has been the hardest? Probably I did the Raid Gawaz in Ecuador, and the altitude. We were up at we went through jungle at 14,000 feet in Ecuador, which is really weird. It's cold, but not cold. And you're at this altitude, so you're not used to it when you're from sea level. And, breathing was really, really challenging and difficult. And then we climbed Cotopaxi, and, that's like a 19,000 foot volcano. And you're in a race doing this. Like, it's not fun. And I think right around that time, I started to realize, what am I doing? Like, this should be fun. This should be amazing and cool. And like, I'm torturing myself up here. That was my last race. That was the last race the long expedition races. Because I left Ecuador and I went straight to Costa Rica, where I was going to do a mountain bike race across the country. You go, it's a 300-mile race. You go from one side of Costa Rica to the other side of Costa Rica. But I had 8 or 9 days to wait. And so I whitewater kayaked like some rivers. It was an amazing trip, but then I had fun. And so I got this whole new experience of fun rather than misery. And I dialed back my racing to much shorter distances after that.
So I think this is a really compelling story, like the theme through here of a path, and like, this isn't what I want, and then change directions, right? Marine Corps. Okay, this isn't what I want. get into adventure racing. This isn't fun. This isn't what I want. So that's really, that's a really interesting journey and insightful. And I think something that really could resonate with a lot of people is like, how do you let yourself go through that evolution and be okay with like what I just did for the last 15 years, 10 years, 5 years isn't what I want for the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah,
what is that like for you?
It's something that when I do my work with my clients now, that's definitely a big thing, is the willingness to be curious, the willingness to let yourself say, I don't know. And because I think we build up in our lives, we build up this, well, I can only speak for myself. I've built up this desire to know. Like, I want to be the guy that knows. And yet the pattern in my life has been, I moved from a place of knowing to a place of unknowing. And it happens all the time. I'm like, I've been doing that as a pattern every 4 to 8 years. Like, I come up with some other thing. Like, I get to a place of really knowing my shit in some area. And then I go to, well, yeah, but what else do I not know? And okay, I think I'll go down this route, this thing. And on one hand, that's hard because I never have allowed myself to get to this place of like ultimate mastery, like 20 years of adventure racing or 20 years of, when I did sales for 4 years, I was at the top of the game at the end of my route with that. And I could have continued in that vein, but I didn't. I decided there was something else for me, so for me, that's been a really, it's kept things very fresh and very new and very exciting and scary also, but exciting. And one of the podcasts I've done, the interviewer knows me really, really well. And he's like, Andy, one of the things that I know about you and from you is I see you as having mastery of beginner's mind. It's called Shoshin. And he's like, you just are able to put yourself in a situation where you might know a lot of things, but you also show up with this fresh eyes approach, and you're humble. You don't brag that, you went to the CrossFit games and you competed in the CrossFit games, and you just show up and you just do your thing. And you start, which is, I hadn't really never thought about that before, but that is what I do. I put myself in this situation to be a learner, to always be learning something from people that may not even feel like they're qualified to teach me, and I'm always learning something new.
That's a really cool mindset to have. So on the flip side of that, it has to be your family that goes along with on these adventures with you. So yeah. How do they handle this beginner's mind that you have and the impact that it has on them as they're going on this ride with you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think when Julia and I got married, I was this adventure racing guy. She met me because I'd started this camp with a couple of my friends. It was called Girl Teams. It was a camp. He had 2 daughters. So he wanted to create an environment for women to learn how the skills of adventure racing, mountain biking and kayaking and orienteering, like using a map and compass to find your way in the outdoors. And I partnered with him to build this camp. And she was one of the participants in the camp, like the 3rd or 4th camp. And we eventually ended up dating, like, I don't know, 6 months later, 7 months later. And so that's all she knew me as. And then I started personal training, and I was working with individuals one-on-one. And each step of that process was challenging, but organic. Like, I never took a leap that was so drastic that it would have cost me my home or would have left me destitute. Like, I took these calculated risks. And because she always worked, and she's, you could say is, from a financial standpoint, way more successful than I've ever been. She's a pretty famous music supervisor. She puts music in movies, and like big movies. Like she did A Star Is Born, for God's sakes. She was texting with Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper, and she had Justin Timberlake on speed dial for Trolls. She did Trolls. I mean, like this crazy world. Like, what is this? Can I just come with you to work one day? Can I do like a ride along? But fortunately, she afforded me the opportunity to be able to be more exploratory and not have to fear, like, I wasn't mortgaging my home every time I made one of these jumps, which I'm eternally grateful for that. That doesn't get lost on me. It's not like everybody can make those kinds of decisions and just throw caution to the wind and leap, like, it's nice to be able to do that, but you have to know, like, what is an appropriate leap, not just leap, because that's when you end up homeless under a bridge.
Yeah, it's good to know that you have a net when you leap.
Yeah. And when my son was born, that was another really big event, because I knew I didn't want to be the dad that my dad was to me. And I was working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, starting this gym. I'd been 2 years into the gym, and I hired a guy who really shifted the way that I thought about running a gym as a business, not as a extension of being a personal trainer. And it led to like massive success with the gym. It also led me down a path that was more about getting more people to do, like, because I was in the space of a low priced product, like gym membership was, it wasn't a cheap gym membership. It was $300 a month, but you needed a lot of $300 a month members in order to make ends meet to pay your trainers and your coaches and for me to make money. And then when I started doing the Whole Life Challenge, it was $39, $49, or $59. It was like, okay, we need thousands of people to make ends meet for that business. And it really pulled me in a direction that ended up not being so healthy for me, because I'm in a business of serving people, and one person matters. And I completely lost touch with that element of, like, I'm like, well, if we don't get another 1,000, then who cares, I just lost that humanity piece. And that's why the coaching has been such a really, like, a re-entry into my heart and into what really makes a difference for me inside, and why I do this to begin with.
Yeah, that's great. So tell us, so this is a good segue, because I do want to talk about the Whole Life Challenge, because I know that you started it to make a bigger impact, and I know that it did have a negative outcome in your own life. So talk a little bit about why you started it, what it is, why you started it, and go into a little bit more detail of, when things started to go wrong and what you did when you realized it.
So the challenge was really something that I had been working on since I became a trainer. Like, it was way before I ever knew it was going to be a challenge, way before, I was of the mindset with my clients that I wanted them to achieve great things in their life in addition to what they were doing in the gym. Like, I didn't want the gym to be some separate piece the gym's included in the way you eat, in the way you sleep, in the way you show up in the world for your job, in the way you put on your suit and your clothes. Like, it all matters, because it all affects your ability to be successful in your life, your mindset, and your emotional fitness. And I saw in the world of personal training way too many people who were basically like dog walkers. They would put their clients on a leash. They would guide them through the gym. They would say, okay, do 10 sets of this, 10 reps of this, 10 reps of this, 10. They'd never change. They would just come in and do their thing and basically leave. And so the challenge for me was, how do I get what people are learning in the gym, and how do I get them to start making better decisions in their life? And one of the ways I did that was by starting this physical challenge, which was called the Petranek Fitness Challenge. And it was like a decathlon like event. And I put all my clients in it and said, okay, you got to pay $500 and I'm going to give away 4 of the $500 as a prize money. So the prize pool was like $4,000 or $5,000. It was a big prize pool. And so they were all super excited. They were training for it. Their training sessions became training for the challenge. And so they had context. That was exactly what I wanted to have happen, because I wanted people to start taking more responsibility in their life for the outcomes that they were generating. Not just look at me like, what should I do next? No, you need to lead yourself in your life. And so when we had the idea, Michael is my co-founder. When we had the idea of, we were thinking about all these things, like you got sleep and you've got hydration and you've got food and you've got, like well-being practices, meditation and journaling, and how do you incorporate that stuff? And he's like, well, what if we put it together with one of these challenges? And that's when the idea was born. And it was powerful. I mean, it really upped my game and in my own life. And so the first 5 years of doing the challenge, I mean, I was all in every time we did it, and the challenge was growing. We saw it making a difference in the lives of all the people that played, and then all the people that played in gyms. We were partnering with gyms and they were bringing it in. And it really didn't ever, in terms of its effectiveness, go bad or turn bad. I just was headed down this road that I didn't even really see of, I got sucked into social media and looking at followers and looking at like, what do I need to do to get more people to do this? And this isn't good enough. We need, instead of 10,000 people in a challenge, we needed 20,000. And then when we got to 20,000, we needed 25,000. And it became, I got caught up in the momentum and like this snowball. And it really, for me, what happened in the beginning of 2019 was we had our first drop in registration. We had never had, actually, that's not true. We did have a fall challenge where we had a drop, but this was significant. We had like a 50% drop off. And I tried a whole bunch of things to turn it around. Me and my co-founder were like co-CEOs, but I was really taking the lead in making these changes. I was driving it and pushing it. And a lot of emotional decisions. I lost some people on our team that were meaningful people to me along the way. And I started to go into, I never had a situation in my life before where no matter what I tried didn't work. And I started having panic attacks. I started having anxiety that I knew about it. I mean, I have a degree in spiritual psychology. And so I know, and I've worked with people, a lot of people who've gone through this, but knowing what it is completely different than being in it. And I always thought, oh, you could just, suck it up, buttercup. You can, let's go. And I couldn't do that. I mean, I could not. There was a point at which I was terrified to leave the house, like it was like a octopus that was, stuck on me. I couldn't, like so unknown and so, life wrenching. And it took me till like the beginning of 2020 to come out of that. And when I did, just realized that I did not have the same fire to go back into a world where I was focused on how many more people could I get to do this. I wanted to make a difference. Like one person mattered. And I mean, that period of pain, I got a completely new experience of what life was like for my mom. Like I get choked up actually thinking about it. Like as a single, she wasn't a single parent, but as an alone parent, raising 2 kids as a school teacher, making life so perfect for me that I never even knew anything was bad. She didn't know where we were going to live. We weren't really on the run, but we lived in a basement of a neighbor's house for 3 months, and we lived in a farmhouse, and because she needed to get away from my dad. And just this new connection of my heart to my mom. I mean, even if that was the only thing that I got from it, it was just huge for me. And I felt like I regained a piece of like humanity in me. And it became clear that I just wasn't serving the world or myself by continuing in this same way with the challenge. And once I realized that, it was like, I got to go.
Yeah.
I got to go. And
Yeah.
this was the first going that was way riskier, I felt, than any of the other goings, because I didn't have an established clientele. I didn't, I'd work with people, like I said, through my spiritual psychology degree, and I've been coaching people for 25 years. So it's not like I had no experience, but to create a new business around, that's a completely different story. I'm still, it's probably going to take a few years to really build that. It's not easy today, even today, but yeah.
That is an amazing story. And I think it will resonate with so many leaders, because it's hard when you put all of your passion, blood, sweat, tears into something, to not have the work you do be tied to your self-worth. And it's such a dangerous path for us to go through, because we are not our work.
Right.
But when it takes over like that, it can be, some amazing things can happen, but it can be very damaging as well. And I think that's a something that we all have to watch out for, is when you start tying your self-worth to, your job, your success, your followership, it can take you to a really dark place fast. And I appreciate you sharing that story, because I think a lot of us can go there, no doubt.
It's funny, like, as I think about it, I had no idea it was even happening.
Yeah.
I had no idea it was until it was like nothing I did worked, nothing I could do was, and then all of a sudden it was like, boom, like it was like, it was funny. The analogy that I have for it is like I was like walking along in my life, happy-go-lucky, 52 years of like literally like no experience. What's anxiety? I don't even know what that is. And suddenly, while I'm walking along, then I look down and I noticed, oh, I'm on like a boardwalk, like planks, right? And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But I was kind of in a fog, like, and not really knowing where I was going, but I could just see that I was on planks. And then all of a sudden this fog got blown away, and I realized that I was on a bridge, a suspension bridge, without any handrails or anything else, a couple miles long and over like a 10,000 foot chasm. And that was the fear that was exactly what, and I didn't see it. I didn't see it until it occurred. So if you have a sense of that's happening, and like pay attention to that, and talk to someone, find a coach, find a therapist, find your spouse, somebody, because look, my experience is it leads to tough times.
Yeah.
It might not for everybody, but it certainly can.
Yeah, well, I think that's the power of always searching for your blind spots. And it's so hard because, well, they're blind spots, right?
That's right. Right.
But,
right.
I think this is a really powerful message, because if we do go through just pushing, and never stopping to reflect, right? That's part of the whole purpose of this podcast, is the idea of reflect forward. If we don't take that time, the next thing you know, you are in a bad spot and you don't know how you got there. Right. And undoing that can be incredibly difficult. So yeah, you have to change your whole entire life, your whole entire approach. So I can imagine that was a very challenging year for you.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So one of the things that you talk about in some of your other podcasts, and that's on your bio, you talk about resolve and willpower. And so, when you're in that moment of, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life after this, I just know that I can't keep doing what I'm doing. How did willpower and resolve play into how you got yourself out of it?
There was a point at which, when I was saying before that I was afraid to leave the house, that we were going to take a 2-week trip down to the East Coast. My son plays baseball, and we were going to Cooperstown, which was a big event for baseball players. And there was like 2 weeks before the trip, and I looked at Julie and I'm like, honey, I don't know if I can go. Like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I can't picture being able to even leave the house right now. And I don't really know where. I'm sure I read about this somewhere or heard about it somewhere, but I just decided that although I couldn't picture what even the next day was gonna hold, I could chunk down time into like 15-minute blocks. And I could say, okay, I might not be able to do the next 12 hours, but I can do the next 15 minutes. So what am I going to do for the next 15 minutes? Oh, okay, I'm going to call Uber. Okay, I can do that. And then what am I going to do for the next? Oh, I'm going to get the bags downstairs. Okay, I can do that. And then, okay, don't worry about what's next after that. Like, don't worry about the fear of pulling up at the airport or any. What's next? Get into the Uber. Okay, I can do that. I can. It's now. Oh, you know where? That's so funny. The movie that just popped into my head was Bill Murray plays a hilarious character in What About Bob? That he does. They chunk it down into baby steps. So I was basically like, What About Bob? And that totally worked. And I think that I had a commitment to my son that transcended my condition, that made me say, you're going to do this, and you got to come up with a strategy. And it was the desire to the unwavering commitment to showing up for my son. I've never really thought of this before. That got me to figure out a solution, like, you know, and then it just, I've used that, you know, going forward since then. You know, it was like, okay, you don't know, but you can take another step, and you can take another step, and you're not stuck.
I think that is such phenomenal advice for anybody, whether you're in the darkest moment of your life, which, let's face it, there are, you know, millions of people who are right there right now, or just stuck in what do I do next? And chunking it down is such a powerful tool, and tying that to something that's bigger than yourself, right? So I'm doing this for my son. It always is such a motivational you know, hack, a mind trick of like, this is not about me, this is about somebody else, and how I chunk it down. So I do that. I get overwhelmed by the sheer amount of things that I decide that I'm going to do. Right? It's like I have this like unrelenting drive to achieve and make an impact and do more. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I have all of these things that I'm going to do, and how do I get it done? And my executive coach, has helped me with this whole idea of micro achievements. And so it's like, break it down. These are the things that I'm going to get done, you know, today and this week. And it's amazing how that can pull you through those little like moments of panic of, I just have to get these 3 things done. And if I do that, hey, that's what success looks like. And so, you know, I think it's such a great example of a way to get through any challenging moment, whether it's I'm feeling overwhelmed by my work to I am, you know, having panic attacks and anxious and afraid to leave the house. Here's what I can do if I break it down to small steps. So I think that's a really powerful story.
Yeah, thank you.
Trick. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's weird because what serves others ultimately serves you.
Totally.
But it's a trick. It's a mind trick. You're right, because you get out of your own way, and then you realize, wow, like I can't imagine having missed that trip. Like that ultimately was powerful for me and my commitment to myself, but it was because of my commitment to him that I was willing to go do it.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, that is the essence of being human, right? It is about ourselves and the connections that we have with other people. And so what seems like might be self-serving and impactful to another person can be beautiful, or what can seem like a completely selfless act for another person has profound personal ramifications too. And so if we embrace that giving, actually we get more. And
right.
Sometimes when you put yourself first, it can mean that you have the ability to give more. And right. I think a lot of us just don't necessarily have the insight to see it that way.
There's a lot of forgetting that if you're not well fed and taken care of, you're not serving your family. You're not actually doing for your family what you need to be doing to show up as your best self. And a lot of people like completely forget that. They just they go out, they're like, I got to pay the bills. I've got to, get all these, I got a to-do list. It's 3,000 miles long, and nowhere on the to-do list is anything about them.
Yeah.
And, it's the old, put the oxygen mask over your mouth first in the airplane. If you remember what it's like to fly, any of you who haven't been flying. But yeah, like you got to do that. Like that's part of the oxygen. That's the survival system of you.
Yep.
It's important.
I think this is something that's very profound to me, because it's something I had to learn how to do a long time ago, was to be able to take care of myself, and that self-care is a discipline, right? Not a luxury. And what I realize now is that, like, I do take care of myself. I make sure that I exercise. I make sure I eat well. I get a massage every week because it's how I manage my stress. And I show up so much more effective in my marriage, and as a mother and as a CEO. And it really seems counterintuitive that if you really do take care of yourself, you can give so much more. And I feel like I am trying to be a role model for my employees and for my son and for my husband, for my, for all the people I care about, as it is not a selfless act to say, I need a little bit of time to make sure that I'm healthy, spiritually, physically, all of it together, the holistic piece of it, because I can give you so much more when I'm showing up as the best version of myself. And I think women particularly fall into this trap of, I have to give myself to my children first. I have to give myself to my family first. And then I have work or whatever it is that we feel our responsibilities are for, and we lose ourselves. And so I think it's a really profound message that it's okay to say, I'm going to take care of myself and make sure that I get to a good place, because I will be better for you when I'm there.
It's, I think one of the things I loved about being a trainer and opening and being in a gym is the gym is such a great proving ground for this stuff. Like if you just picture a sports team, like imagine one of the players on the sports team showing up, having a bender, going on a bender, not sleeping. They're an NFL player and they show up for the game and they've got 2 hours of sleep. They haven't eaten well. They are not able to actually do the service to their teammates that they need to be able to do in order to they have to be their best so that their team can be their best. And the same applies to your family. The same applies to your company. You have to take care of the host. You're the host. You've got to take care of the host.
I love that. No one has ever put it that way, but it is so true, right? If you are part of a team, whether that's a team of the family, team at your work, anywhere, you have to perform at your very best. And you can only do that if you are taking care of yourself. I love that. That's such a great takeaway. I do want to explore this father thing for a moment, because you've mentioned it a couple of times with not having a great relationship or any really relationship with your dad. And we come from the same lineage, patriarchal lineage.
Fortunately or unfortunately.
I have a tumultuous relationship with my father as well, who is a Petranek. And I'm really curious as to, how the seeking his approval has shaped you as a leader and as a father, because, you saying, like, I did this for my son, that's probably not something that you would have expected your dad to say. And I'm certainly not something that I would expect my dad to say. So how has that really shaped your life?
It's funny. My perspective on this has changed. I went through a lot of years of just no desire to be connected to my father at all. I was a top level trumpet player. I don't have one memory of my dad ever sitting down with me. And my dad taught band. My dad taught every instrument. He could play every instrument. He could teach every instrument. He conducted orchestras. He conducted bands. He was in World War II. He was in World War II and conducted the band at Walter Reed Hospital, and was, so he's experienced all these things. Like, I don't have one memory of him sitting down next to me and coaching me or helping me with any passage that I ever was working on the trumpet, ever. So I didn't have any like hate for him, but he just wasn't a part of my thinking, and I always questioned his ability to love me. Like if how could he have loved me? Like, there's no way he loved me, because look how he treated me. Look how he acted toward me. Look how he, when we would play golf together, he did teach me how to play golf, which I'm grateful for. But it was a competition. It was never, he encouraged me up to a point, and then when it got to the point where I could maybe hold my own with him, that was over. It was count every stroke. If you missed the ball, that counts as a stroke. If you had a slice into the water, that was a 3-stroke, 2-stroke penalty, and it became, I would come home in tears. Like, when I was in 9th grade, 10th grade. And this is when I was, living with my mom, and my dad would take me out for these golf outings, and I would keep going back because I wanted to connect with my dad. I wanted this connection with him. And, but I realized, later on, through a lot of the work, through that spiritual psychology program that I did, my dad struggled with his own demons, and he was doing the best he could, as a human being, and the best he was trained to do it through his background. And just because he didn't show up for me in the way that I wanted him to show up doesn't mean he didn't love me, which was that was like a mind-blowing revelation for me. Like, you don't have to do anything to love someone else. You could treat them like shit, and you could actually still love them, which is like, it makes no sense on one hand. It's not the way I choose to live my life. I want my actions to speak for my emotions and my the way I feel on the inside. But my dad he was doing the best he could, and that was what he was equipped to do. And so there was a lot of healing inside of me after he passed away. He also had a series of strokes before he died, and he did shift. I think as he saw his own humanity, he started to remember birthdays, and he started to communicate more regularly, more often. So there was some resolution of at least some of this. But I learned a lot more after he passed away, and fortunately, that still counts. It still counts.
Absolutely. I remember when I had the same realization about my dad. I was with him, and we were in Indianapolis. He had been working up there, and I was at a trade show, and he took me, I said, "Hey Dad, why don't you come over and let's go to dinner?" And we did. And he took me to this unbelievable restaurant in, kind of on the outskirts of downtown Indianapolis. Phenomenal, like this, 200-year-old brick building. And we had a bottle of wine, and we're talking. And I said, "Dad, I really have all these questions that I want to ask about, who you are and what decisions you made when I was a kid." And, he was like, "I'm going to try to be as honest as I can." And I could see, and, obviously I like asking questions. I love interviewing. I'm sure he felt like I was interrogating him. But, I felt energetically like his whole life was flashing before his eyes. And he looked at me and he said, "That's enough. I've had enough. I'm doing the best that I can." And like, I felt his pain and realized, like, it wasn't me. It wasn't my mom. It wasn't my brother. It wasn't any of that. It was about him and his journey and how he felt about himself and his relationship with his father, who of course is, your father's brother, and all of these things. And I finally had this realization, like, oh shit, this is not about me. And it was the first place that I could really just be okay with him being the way that he was. And, I wish that we had a better relationship than we do now. And I think that because I have a son and he's interested in Jack's life, that has helped. Mm-hmm. But boy, it was this huge sense of, of relief and freedom of going, this isn't actually about me. This is really about him. And yes, it impacts me, but it's a profound shift to be able to make.
Yeah, it's a huge, it's so wonderful that you've been able to have that I've been able to have that. Not everybody has that. My wife's sister doesn't talk to anyone in the family. She doesn't. She's got 2 sisters, and one of them won't talk with her mom. Didn't come to her dad's funeral. Doesn't talk to us. Doesn't talk to my son. She's still struggling with stuff, and I don't know that she even knows she's struggling with stuff. Like it's just the way she's created her life.
Yeah.
And
well, we're good at believing our own stories, that's for sure.
Because we keep telling them. We keep telling our, like unless you have somebody that interrupts the story,
Yeah.
You're kind of screwed.
Well, that's also the most beautiful part about being human is that, if we can interrupt that story, we have the power to change that story, right? We can make up, I don't want to say this like in, the days of fake news and like, us not living in reality, but we can create a different story for ourselves.
Yeah.
And it really can be that simple. It's not easy,
right?
But it can be that simple. I'm choosing a different story. And in that moment with my dad, I chose a different story. I chose, this is not me. This is not my story. This is his story. And it was profoundly freeing for me. But, you have to have it. I like that, the way that you put that, an interrupter of your story to help you, whatever that is.
It's like you need a person or a moment or a thing like happened with your dad to be like, oh, wait a second. I never looked at it from that side before. And, you can do that with some work. You can do that in every story in your life, because all of the things that we do, we're telling ourselves a story that makes it either okay or not okay. Yeah. And if something's not okay, you can take that story that you're telling yourself, this isn't okay. Like, well, what if it was okay? Or how might it look if you walk down the block of your street, you see things one way and you turn around and you walk the other way and suddenly it's like, oh, I'd never noticed that before. Like, look at that. So like, what if you just turn around and walk the other way? And how do you see it then that way? Yeah. And hugely powerful, because you get what you focus on. And if you're focused on negative and you're focused on why things are not working and you're focused on excuses and stories, and you're going to get more of it.
Yeah.
You're going to create more of it.
Yeah, we manifest it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And that can be a scary thing. And I'm always careful when I say that because, I think I've said it before. I said it to my husband once, actually. He was like, I was like, well, you're manifesting this. He's like, so what? You're just telling me like I deserve this? No, that's not what I said. But
like saying those things to your spouse, like to my wife, like, that's bad. That's tough.
Yeah, I know. He can handle it better now. That was really young in our marriage, but it really we really do manifest what we think, and we are our thoughts, and it's hard to wrap your head around that, but when you do, it can be a game changer. And I'm sure that's probably the reason why you're excited about going back and working with people one-on-one, right? Is that you can make this kind of impact, all the things that you've learned through your ups and downs on your journey. You can really help those people more on a one-on-one basis, make a much bigger change in their life through that. So I can imagine that's exciting for you as you start this next adventure.
Yeah, because the other piece that the Whole Life Challenge wasn't doing for me was there was a conversation that was confined to just health and fitness. Yeah. It didn't have to be confined, but it pretty much was, because it was all about these 7 daily habits. And really the conversation that when I go back and look, it's probably been 5 years that I've wanted to have these deeper, bigger, broader conversations with people, that I was just confined into this one corner, one piece. And it's not that piece isn't a big one, it's a big one, but there's other pieces too, and I wanted to have that conversation with people for years. And I just hadn't created the context for it until I was given the boot.
Kind of like hit rock bottom, right? And then you're like, okay, there's this new way that I want to do things.
Yeah,
that's really cool. All right, so this is going to segue, and I've got 2 more questions to ask you before we wrap things up. So the name of this podcast is Reflect Forward. And so that has a very profound meanings, multitude of meanings to me. And I'm curious, what does Reflect Forward mean to you, and how do you use it in your life?
Well, it's interesting because I've never really heard those 2 words together before, because they're for me, reflect is either present or past, and forward is where am I going, but I think it's a really nice combination, because I want to, part of the work that I do when I get coached or when I'm coaching is to help someone see clearly where they are. And in order to see clearly where you are, you have to reflect. And so my job is to like hold up the mirror and say, okay, well, here's where you are, here's where you've been. And there's a pretty good chance that if nothing changes, you're going to go the same direction and keep creating that. Where do you want to go? And so the forward to me is the vision. Where like things are here, and things are going to keep going there if I don't change anything. So where do I want to go? And then it gives you the opportunity to set your sights on something that touches, moves, and inspires you.
Yep,
I love those two. Those two things are really cool.
Thanks. And I love the human mirror part. I mean, some of the most challenging times that I've had, moments, I should say, it's when I have a human mirror of someone just reflecting something back. And it's like, oh, I want to get mad and upset. It's like, oh, and then it's like, oh, wow, you're just the mirror that's reflecting this back to me. And boy, I don't really like what I'm seeing. And so here's the changes that I'm going to make. So I love that. All right. So as we wrap up, what is your best piece of advice for those listening today who want to be exceptional at what they do?
I think it's really perfect. The name of this podcast, I think that's really the key thing, is to be open to reflect and to see what truly is, what's happening. And if you don't like what you see, don't avoid looking. Like keep looking in the mirror. Take your clothes off and look in the mirror. And if you don't like what you see, decide you're going to do something about it. And if you don't like, and if you don't do something about it, then look the next day until you're ready to do something about it. Don't be afraid to look. Yeah. It's really the looking that creates that leverage. You need leverage over yourself to move into a place where you deserve to be, where there's a higher level of you that you have in your head, of the way you've always, the way you always should be. It's waiting for you. You just have to have the courage to step into it. And in order to do that, you have to be willing to look and to reflect and to see what you see, even if you don't like it.
Yep.
So
break it down into small, actionable steps and make it happen.
Be like Bob, and what about Bob?
I love it. It's so beautiful. I totally agree. You cannot become the best version of yourself if you are not willing to look in the mirror and make the changes that you need to make to get there, or learn how to love yourself for the ones that you're not willing to make.
Right.
I think it's really powerful advice. That's awesome. Oh, so much fun. All right. So where can people find you?
AndyPetranek.com. I'm redoing a website. So that website right now doesn't even say that I coach. So it's like, whatever. I'm also Andy Petranek on all social media. So I put more stuff out on that stuff, but that's easy. Andy at AndyPetranek.com is my email address. So you can send me an email.
Well, thank you so much. This has just been the most fun interview, and I hope everybody enjoys it as much as I have, and I hope you've enjoyed.
I've enjoyed it tremendously, especially connecting with somebody that I feel like I have so much in common with. No. My long lost relative.
I know. And my mom's a school teacher too.
Wow.
Raising kids on their own. Yeah. I mean, we have like all these crazy parallels.
Wow. No coincidences.
I know. All right. Well, we'll wrap up. So everybody hang tight and I'll be right back. Thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that podcast. It was very therapeutic for me. I hope it was enjoyable and insightful to you. Okay, on to my question. So it comes from a young lady who I had a conversation with this week. She had reached out to me a few months ago after I had done a YPO live event on cash management. I was a panelist and she had watched, and she had asked for some mentorship. So she's a very bright young woman, is finishing up her master's degree in management at Georgetown University. And she'll be going back to Morocco next year to work in her family business with the plan of eventually taking it over. And she was sharing with me her concerns that she might not get chosen amongst her cousins and other family members to lead the segment of the business that she's most passionate about, that also happens to be the most profitable and successful portion of the business as well. And she was wondering how she should handle it because she didn't think that she wanted to go work in another segment that she didn't have the passion for, and that maybe wasn't as successful as this particular one. And so she asked me my opinion and how I would handle it. And I thought about it because, of course, I faced this very same thing 14 years ago when I started with Stone Age. I had no idea anything about the industrial cleaning industry, and I was not passionate about it. In fact, I expected to be in something far more glamorous than industrial cleaning. I mean, I was going sewer tools. Like, what am I doing with my career? And I'm now very passionate about everything that we do, but it didn't start out that way. What I was passionate about was learning how to be a great leader and developing a great team and building a company and building followership and trust. And as I worked hard to develop myself, develop my team, develop my company, I realized that the industry, it doesn't really matter. What really matters is impact. And by making a big impact on the people you work with, on your customers, creating value and helping them solve tough problems, helping your employees through tough times, helping them create success, giving them jobs that help them be able to build their dreams for their family is so incredibly rewarding. So, my advice to her was don't get caught up on the industry. Don't get caught up on whether or not the products you sell and the industries you serve are in perfect alignment with your passions, because that will come with time. The very best leaders understand that building a strong team, building a strong culture, and building your own leadership skills is what brings joy and purpose and passion to what you do. So I really appreciated the question because I could completely understand where she was coming from, and worrying about, is this going to be in alignment with who I am and with what I want? And I also want to take over a really successful portion of the business. And I'll tell you, it's rewarding when you can take something that maybe is underperforming and turn it around, and when you can find that joy and purpose and passion inside of yourself rather than looking from external sources for it. So I thought it was a really fun story to share, and I thought it might perhaps provide you some guidance and insight in your area, in areas of your life where you might be looking at external things for internal joy and passion. Look from within, build from within, make connections, impact the lives of the people around you, and your life will be so much better. With that, I will leave you until our next episode. Have a wonderful and safe week. Thanks for listening.